at shelters, and that is what we sometimes call inappropriate elimination, cats thinking outside the box. According to lots of surveys, we're about to hear about the number 2 reason, and that is people that are allergic to cats, cat allergies. But it's also a reason for people not adopting, and it impacts the human-animal bond. We're going to hear about all of that and much more momentarily with my friend, Dr. Kurt Venator. Dr. Venator has worked with Purina for over 17 years. He currently serves as the Chief Veterinary Officer. He earned his Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree at Cornell. There's no other school. I mean, that's the only thing. As well as a PhD in zoology, behavior, and physiology from the University of Texas at Austin. And he went there primarily because he heard they had good margaritas. Moreover, Dr. Venator, I will say, is one of my best friends in veterinary medicine now, and also the best fisherman I know. So if we have time at the very end, and if you want tips on how to catch fish, he is your guy. But he's also your guy when it comes to this new idea, and it's amazing. It is amazing. It is a pet food that really is for us. So we don't have runny eyes, and we don't sneeze, and we don't have all those responses that millions do across the world because we're allergic to cats. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kurt Venator.
Thank you very much, Steve, for that very kind and generous introduction. I'd like to thank everyone who's involved in organizing today for putting this together. I think, as you've seen, it's really a wonderful event. I love the list of speakers, a lot of folks I know quite well. And so I'm excited to be here today. And Steve, to your point, I'm also excited to share some really interesting new science that we think is going to help cats and the people who love them come closer together. So with that, Steve, even though you know I'm a bit of a talker, I thought it might be helpful just to have a few slides. So I am now going to share my screen. Okay, great. There we go. And I am now going to put this on presentation mode, I hope. There we go. Excellent. And so I think maybe, Steve, throughout this, we're going to try to make it as interactive as we can when we talk about cat allergens, because I think while all of us here today, and certainly within the veterinary profession, have a passion for cats, I think it's fair to say that we probably likely know someone, perhaps it's yourself, it's a colleague, it's a family member that is sensitive to cat allergens. And so the age-old question is, what can you do about that? What are the potential options out there to address that? But before we get there, I think it's good to probably just start with a bit of just an overview about, how common are these things? And when you look at the data that's out there, as many as close to 20%, 1 in 5 adults globally are sensitive to cat allergens. And I certainly know when I speak across the country on this topic, and I ask audiences to raise their hand, I usually see at least 20% in that range. So I think that's a very accurate number based on, I think, our own personal experience, as well as just what we're seeing out there in the marketplace. And so obviously we're all here today to celebrate cat behavior. We're here to celebrate the beauty and the wonder of the human-animal bond. And so when you think about cat allergens, you need to think about how does that impact that interaction, that engagement, the love that we have each and every day that we want to share. So as I'm sure none of these are going to be super surprising, but I think we're going to be able to dive in here a little bit, perhaps with some additional data. But one of the biggest challenges when it comes to managing cat allergen that we see in terms of the way people currently deal with it in the household is they limit the time and activities they have with their cat. And this can take a variety of different forms. It may be you're no longer cuddling with your cat, or your brother, your sister, your mother, your neighbor, can't come over and visit due to their sensitivity to cat allergens. You're not engaging and enriching them as much. So clearly, limiting time is not ideal. The other one we certainly see and hear a lot about is isolating the cat in the home, perhaps to one floor of the home, one room of the home. And certainly we know that's not good from a socialization and overall, cat happiness standpoint. And then the third, and Steve, you did a great job opening it up earlier in your introduction, is removing the cat from the home, relinquishment. This is a relatively common cause if you look at the statistics for cat relinquishment. And I think all of us can agree that if you look at these three categories, none of them really speak to celebrating, ideally, the human animal bond and our cat, cat owner bond like we'd like to, with the energy and the passion and the love. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So we actually did a very unique and exciting study with HABRI. That's Steve Feldman and his colleagues at the Human Animal Bond Research Institute. And we did this because we wanted to understand a little bit more about the dynamics of how cat allergens affect the cat owner bond in real households. And so we fielded this survey. It had actually a large number of online participants. There were 2,062, and we divided it up into two categories. The first group, composed of 1,002, were cat owning households that had someone in the household sensitive to cat allergens. The other 1,060 were cat owning households that had no sensitivities to cat allergens. So we're really trying to just compare the two and understand the dynamics. Inclusion criteria included adults over the age of 22 and households that had at least one cat, but no more than 4 cats. And I think that was intended to kind of capture the average, or at least regular cat owning household, if you will, so we could dive into the data a bit. And so I'm going to go through each one of these, and I'm not going to throw them up on the screen, but just for this presentation today, Steve and folks out there listening, I pulled some interesting stats, perhaps, to expand on these. The first one, of course, is, I think we'd all say, a no-brainer for this group, right? And for my veterinary colleagues. One of the things we found from this study, as we should, is that love for their cats is ubiquitous among all cat owners. But I will share with you 2 stats that I thought were interesting and really spoke to me. The first is that 90% of cat owners feel their cats are members of their family, which I think we would all agree with. And I'm glad that study's showing that number. I'd love to see it at 100%. The next stat I thought was interesting is 75% of cat owners say their relationship with their cat is part of their health and well-being. And I think that's really important, because one of the things I love about HABRI and a lot of the behaviorists and the enrichment specialists I work at with Purina is the focus on the power of pets in our lives, having both emotional and physical or biological benefits to us. We know that having pets in our lives helps us from a heart rate standpoint, a blood pressure standpoint, an exercise standpoint, et cetera. And I think at least that health and well-being number of 75%, I think indicates that cat owners, realize that cats are really important for their overall health and well-being. The second point that you'll see is cat owners with sensitivities in the household are more likely to change their lifestyle for the cat, and or say cat allergens are a huge problem. And I know we talked about these categories in the last slide, but again, it's always good. I'm a scientist. I was taught by Dr. Ettinger about evidence-based medicine. It's always good to have some statistics to back that up, to help us really conceptualize, how this is affecting cat-only households with sensitivity to allergens. And I'll share a couple stats for you folks right now. 37% of households with sensitivities to cat allergens have had to change their lifestyle to accommodate their cat. And that's a significant increase over those cat-owning households without sensitivities. So 37% have had to change their lifestyle. In addition, 26% of households with cat allergen sensitivities stated that cat allergens have caused huge problems in their life. And I think those are important statistics when we look at this challenge, because I think it brings it to bear that having cat allergen sensitivities and a love and a passion for cats can be challenging. And it really is causing challenges and huge problems within many of these households. The third one that you can see, households with sensitivities are spending more time and energy on cleaning and cat maintenance. And I don't think that comes as a surprise to us, but again, let's look at some of the statistics to just dive in a little bit more with the details. Cat owners with cat allergen sensitivities do 41% more household cleaning. So that's 41% more household cleaning than those without cat allergen sensitivities. I'm the chef in my home. I'm not the cleaner, so I can tell you that that's just not my passion. 41% more household cleaning certainly is probably not ideal for many individuals from a timing standpoint, from just a responsibility standpoint, etc. They also spend 26% more money per month. So 26% more money per month on cat-related purchases than those without the sensitivities. So clearly, what we're finding out from some of this information is it's not only a challenge in terms of time, but it's also a challenge in terms of money. And then the fourth here, cat allergens get in the way of personal relationships. And this is an interesting one, and one we wanted to dive a little deeper in to actually at least get some statistic around this to understand what does that mean. Among households with sensitivities, 13% have had to choose between their cat and a personal relationship. And so that really, I think, speaks to the power of the human-animal bond, as well as the challenges that we're facing. We also had some statistics on the percentage of people that said if their doctor told them to, their human doctor told them to relinquish their cat, many of them said, I'm either going to find another doctor or I'm going to step away and find another doctor or just ignore the advice. So clearly, it is getting in the way of personal relationships, and it's challenging, I would say, all around. So then we get to the fifth point with current methods to manage cat allergens. And I think it's fair to say that they're not very often easy or effective, as we already talked about. In fact, based on this survey that we did with HABRI, and I think this is an important take-home percentage, 62% of households with sensitivities to cat allergens say their current methods of managing these allergens are only somewhat effective or not effective. So as we've walked through this, clearly this is having an impact on the beauty of the cat owner bond. It's challenging from a time standpoint. It's challenging from a cost standpoint. It can be challenging from a personal relations standpoint. And right now, if 62% believe the current methods are only somewhat effective or not effective. So then that leads us into, well, what can we do? What other tool might we have in our toolbox as we want to help cats and the people who love them come closer together? And so what I will share with you here, and this is kind of the announcement slide, although it's been out in the marketplace, but it may be new to some of you. After more than a decade of research, and it was actually a bit more after a decade, our scientists at Purina, and we always focus on science as the driver of innovation, discovered a breakthrough approach that safely, I'd say simply, and significantly reduces allergens in cat hair and dander. So I want to say that again. So this breakthrough approach simply, safely, and significantly, and I'll share a number with you, reduces allergens in cat hair and dander. And so this is not a big promotion here. I will put up the packaging just so you can see what it looks like. This helps keep my marketing friends happy. But we have a product out there that's been out in the marketplace since April. It's currently out there right now. It's called Purina Pro Plan Live Clear. It comes in 3 adult formulations, as you'll see there. And it is clinically proven based on the science that we've done and we've published in third-party journals to simply and safely reduce cat allergens and hair and dander by an average, this is key, by an average of 47%, starting with just the 3rd week of daily feeding. So reducing the active allergens in the household environment by an average of 47%, starting with just 3 weeks, the 3rd week of feeding. And so now I'm going to get a little bit into the science, because I think people are often have, tremendously wonderful questions about, well, how does it work? And before we can answer how it works, we need to pause to consider, well, what are cat allergens? How do they work? Where do the sensitivities come from? And many of you do already likely know this, but I think many people believe it's the cat hair that is the offender. In reality, it's what's on the cat hair. So all cats, regardless of age, breed, hair length, sex, produce a protein in their saliva that's called FeLD1. That's FeLD1. And when they groom themselves, they deposit that on their skin and their hair, and then that ultimately falls off into the household environment as dander and hair. So one of our researchers, his name is Dr. Ebenezer Satyaraj. He has a PhD in nutritional immunology. Really came up with this idea over a decade ago. And he said, well, what happens if you could identify another protein, one that is a key protein sourced from eggs, and have it actually bind to this FeLD1 that's produced by cats, so it safely and simply neutralizes it in the mouth of the cat before it even gets deposited onto the hair and the skin. And that's exactly what Dr. Ebenezer and his team did. The beautiful thing I like about this, and the way I talk about this in the exam room as a veterinarian, is this is a simple and safe way to approach it that's very cat friendly. No one, researchers at Purina or other researchers around the globe in feline health and medicine, we do not know what FeLD1 does. And so it was very important to us not to necessarily stop its production. That wasn't the goal. The goal, and I think what makes this simple and elegant, was since we don't know what FeLD1 does, we don't want to alter in any way, shape, or form the underlying physiology or biology of the cat. Instead, what we want to do is just simply neutralize this protein in the cat's mouth before it's deposited on the hair and the skin. And that's exactly what this product does. And if you can think about that, that's pretty remarkable. By feeding this complete and balanced diet for adult cats, it also has wonderful things in there like omega-6 fatty acids, vitamin A, taurine, etc., probiotics as well for a healthy gastrointestinal system, and this egg protein ingredient, reducing the active allergen in the environment by 47% in just 3 weeks of feeding, in my mind, is pretty remarkable. And we have a tremendous amount of published science around this. Obviously, we always do. The number one priority we always have is the health and safety of pets and the health and safety of cats in this case. We've done all of the studies to show that this product is safe and effective and shows a significant reduction in this active FeLD1. So I'm often asked, well, what does this mean, Kurt? Well, for me, the way I like to describe it as a veterinarian and to the cat lovers out there is, this is another tool in your toolbox. This is one more tool that's in your toolbox to manage cat allergens in the environment. This is not meant to replace existing cat allergen management strategies. It's meant to augment that and give you another option. So obviously, as we already talked about through some of the statistics, there's a lot of already increased cleaning that'll still be part of the methodology. People often use HEPA filters and other filters, changing your air filters around the home, etc. The cleaning can be, obviously vacuuming, washing of pillows, changing of bedding. I thought it was interesting that during some of our focus group research during the development of this product, I still remember an interesting story of a cat lover in Chicago whose cat spent most of the time on the couch in the apartment each and every day. And this individual would change their couch every 6 months due to the buildup of cat allergens. And that was one of their strategies, to buy a new couch every 6 months, which I think is beautiful. But if we can help with that, why not? Obviously, brushing your cat, just helping with regular grooming. It's great for the cat, it's great for their appearance, and it's also great for the bonding between you and your cat. And then obviously, this is now another tool that we're very excited about, which is ProPlan Live Clear. And so, and this is actually my last slide, because I wanted to give enough time for questions and comments, because folks often have a lot of questions, and I'm more than happy to address all of them. So, I think it's fair to say that as we think about even this conference on cat behavior, as we think about why we're here today, it's really about enriching this bond between cats and the people who love them. And we believe that by adding this other tool, ProPlan Live Clear, to our toolbox, it's going to allow us to more actively engage with our cats, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I think also when we need to think about cats at home, and to me right now, this is obviously very timely for all of us with COVID-19. As we're thinking about how do we make sure our cats remain well socialized and happy now that we're spending more time there, or our schedule has been altered over time. And folks are going to cover off on this throughout the next today and tomorrow. The importance of keeping a routine. And then, my colleagues, especially at Purina, are behaviorists. Steve, Dr. Reagan McGowan, Dr. Sandra Lynn, Dr. Francois, and a host of others, always talk about the importance of giving them space. And this is a question I've actually gotten a lot about recently from folks writing articles about COVID-19 and people spending more time at home with their pets. We all know that cats, just like people, have individual personalities. Some may be gregarious and love that personal interaction, and others may need that space and that time alone, that a bit of alone time to adjust and decompress. Obviously, you folks are going to be talking a lot about other ways to engage and enrich and cat perches and things of that nature. But I wanted to kind of weave this in that I think the concept of managing cat allergens has really heightened, I would say, as of late, as families are spending more time at home and trying to figure out the best way and the best measures they can use to reduce allergens in their environment so they can really have that time to spend with their cat that they love so much. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that Steve or anyone else in the audience may have.
We do. Now, I don't know that my picture's back up there, even though not that anyone.
I'm gonna hold on. Let me go back here, Steve.
Okay.
Let me get out of this.
Because I do have show video on here, and it's not. But you can.
You sure are. We see you looking great as ever.
Steve is always looking great.
No, not as great as Dr. Venader. And you know what? I did a very bad thing. Great presentation. And we'll take questions in a moment. We've got a lot of those. But I did a bad thing. I didn't initially, and I was supposed to do this, so I'll do this now. Here is your poll. So if you guys want to fill this out, that would be great. And then Becky will chime in when the results are here. And as you do that, we can multitask a little bit. So hopefully you are seeing the poll now. And let me get to some of the questions. So you ready, Dr. Venader?
You bet. You bet, Steve.
Okay. So shampooing cats. A lot of people are asking. There are shampoos that I know are at the pet stores that say, allergic to cats? No problem. Use our shampoo. What about that?
You know what, I always recommend speaking, Steve, my standard phrase, but I always say when it comes to the health and well-being of your pets and of your cat, your veterinarian and his or her staff are widely versed. There are a tremendous number of new innovations and products out there all the time. And I know even, as a veterinarian, it's challenging sometimes to keep up with all of them. Sometimes there are even changes in a particular product that, folks may not be aware of. So I always recommend reaching out to your veterinarian. There are some products that are out there. There's also I've seen some dry mousses, right? Because obviously cats don't necessarily love to be bathed. Certainly not all, as many people know here. So some dry mousses that may help, with the removal of that hair and that dander. But I'd suggest, obviously you should be seeing your veterinarian at least once a year. And, one of the things I always try to impress upon people, and I'm sure Dr. Ernie Ward and others that are here will reiterate, we love talking to our clients. Yes, we're very busy, right? And we may not be able to get back to you, within 15 minutes, but we love, either ourselves or our staff members answering these types of questions and giving you that particular product information so you can feel comfortable and confident that it's going to be safe and effective.
Well, that question, as well as some others, for example, what about HEPA air filters, et cetera? Maybe you could talk about how allergies build upon one another. And if you do some things that'll help, that's great. And some are more beneficial to some people than others. Cumulative was the word that I'm looking for to describe what allergies are and how they work. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yes, certainly, Steve. So, the way I'm going to give you a stab of how I kind of describe the allergen threshold first, and then we can talk about, what does that mean in terms of what we do from a management standpoint. So, as a veterinarian, when I talk about this in the exam room, I like to describe, the allergen threshold, and in this case, let's say the allergen threshold for cat allergens, kind of like what you will see in certain cities when they talk about the fog index. Let's put it like that way, and we'll keep it really simple. There are certain days that are outside that are green, there are certain days that are yellow, and there are certain days that are red. And it's not necessarily just one item. It can be a variety of different things, or an allergen index, right? That you may see. And so often they combine on top of each other and get you in a threshold. What we've tried to do with this innovation is remove one of those so you're below the triggered threshold, because the reality is there could be a variety of different things resulting in allergen sensitivities beyond just cat allergens. But even beyond that, I would say that these methodologies need to often be incorporated together, right? Like, you're not just going to feed this product and that's all you're going to be doing. But the goal really is to continue your other management strategies to lower the sensitivity, in that household below some absolute threshold. And the reality is that can vary, right? It may vary based on certainly household, the cleaning regimen that they already have, the sensitivity of the particular individual, the cat itself. So all those things, we can't give you a definitive, concrete, specific answer in a percentage or something. But the reality is, yes, if you are doing vacuuming and you are cleaning regularly, you're using air filters, and you're using Purina Live Clear, the goal is to help drive that threshold down, and what we call the overall allergen burden, the overall allergen burden down below, so that you'll be able to spend more time with your cat.
And of course, you're not just saying all this. What you didn't show, because I've been at these presentations for veterinary professionals, which I'm honored to be at, is you have, I think, 100 zillion slides showing the data that you have that demonstrates everything you just said is in fact true.
That is correct. And obviously, I didn't want to dive too far into all of the specifics, because as you've seen, we would be here potentially all day based on some of the conferences we've had.
Exactly.
And the science we have. What I can tell you, Steve, is that obviously, as I mentioned during the presentation, the health and safety of cats and dogs, obviously pets, is paramount to us. It's always number one. So we've done those safety studies because that's certainly a question that we get. I think the veterinarians, when we presented this in national, international conferences, have been impressed with the peer-reviewed published studies that we've done. And I always think that's important because, again, as I mentioned earlier, one of my mentors really focuses on, if you're going to say it, it needs to be backed up with science. And as you know, the gold standard is a peer-reviewed published study out in the marketplace that's been reviewed by, independent scientific experts. And we've done a tremendous amount of that. We've published across many of the things I talked about today. And you can certainly, learn more if you want to by going to our website to delve into some of that research. But I think that's the key. I think the key is I see this as, again, one more option that you have to help manage those cat sensitivity, allergen sensitivities.
And incidentally, I happen to know the first place that you guys published wasn't in a veterinary publication of one type or another. It was in a human publication, something like the Journal of Allergies and Asthma or something to that effect. But it was human allergists that really got on board with this idea first and foremost, which is impressive. Also, for our poll, have allergies ever come between you and adopting a pet? So clearly, we have cat lovers here. Who else, right? Every one of you, if you're not a cat lover, leave immediately. So we have cat lovers here, and 15% say that they have been impacted. Now, extrapolate that to America, around the country. 15% of cats, that's millions of cats, right? So the potential here to adopt more cats and fewer relinquishments of cats is overwhelming to me. Getting back to the questions, does this have to be the only food my cat eats?
That's a great question. This needs to be the predominant food that your cat eats. If you want to supplement with some wet food, if that's your choice, etc., that's okay. But it should be the main food that they eat, and that really speaks to how the food works. What's going on is when they eat the kibble, this egg protein ingredient that's on the kibble then interacts with that FeLD1 protein and neutralizes it in the mouth. And so it's important to be feeding it every day. As I mentioned, in our study results, it's a 47% reduction, significant reduction of the active cat allergen after 3 weeks of daily feeding. So the key is to make sure you're feeding it daily so you can see the most beneficial result, but you can certainly supplement with other food and other dry food or a cat food predominantly, as long as this is predominantly the main food that your cat's eating.
So
And,
yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I'll say right now, our offerings, as I mentioned, are 3 adult formulas. We have a chicken and rice, a salmon and rice, and then a sensitive skin and stomach turkey and oatmeal. So we tried to provide some variety from a pellet standpoint, as we know how that's important, how important that is to our feline friends.
Several questions here asking about, will there be a moist version of this at some point in time?
That's a great question, and one I get often. I would say not in the near future, and that's simply due to the manufacturing process and this egg protein ingredient and how it interacts with FeLD1 in the mouth. You can make that efficacious and effective with a dry formula. Right now, we have not figured out how to make that work with a wet formula.
A question that I know you're familiar with because you've helped me out with this one. Can't I, when I have breakfast in the morning, just make scrambled eggs for my cat?
Well, no, because this is a specific egg protein ingredient that we're using, and it's specific based on the science on how it works and how it's going to bind. You can't just grab a random egg and assume that it's going to or have that efficacious effect and actually bind and neutralize. It has to be using this nutrition technology.
One question here is asking about Russian blues having less FeLD1 or FeLD1 protein. I'll add to that. If you go online, you'll see a long list of cat breeds that presumably have less of that protein. What about that?
There are variations. People talk about different variations, but there are even variations among cats, right? In terms of FeLD1, and so I think as we look at it, again, I think I pause and even go back further, Steve, to your point around just the general population and the potential impact. But so regardless of sex, breed, hair length, age, all cats will produce FeLD1. Some may produce less. And then there are other FeLDs out there, but the major one that most people globally are sensitive to at something like the 90% or above range is FeLD1. So I think, again, and this gets into the question that we're often asked, Steve, I'm sure you're asked it too, is there such a thing as a truly, hypoallergenic cat? The reality is no, since all cats, regardless of breed, do produce this. There tends to be some differences, but then again, it's also important to recognize there can even be individual differences.
And as cats age, very often geriatric cats apparently produce less of that protein, the FeLD1 protein. But again, it's individual depending on the cat. And some people do seem to build up a resistance for their own individual cat, maybe a year or 2 or 3 later, but some individuals actually the reverse happens. So there's no predicting how you're going to be affected one way or the other. Couple questions here. Simply, where do I get this product from, and is it prescription only?
That's a great question. It is not a prescription product. It is available at pet specialty retailers and online retailers. So pet specialty and online, it does not require a prescription. It is available. You can go out and get it at a variety of different pet specialty retailers and online at many of those retailers as well.
Yeah, I think Purina Pro Plan Live Clear is available pretty much anywhere pet food is sold, actually. Now this person must be a veterinarian because they're skeptical. So the question is this: a 40% decrease, and I'm not sure that number is right, but I'm just reading the
Sure.
question. A 40% decrease, and he's essentially asking, what good does that do? You partially answer that, but I'm thinking if he's thinking that, others may be too.
Sure. No, that's a great question. Well, keep in mind that we're dealing with averages, and some cats are going to produce more, and some cats are going to produce less. First off, I just want to factually clarify: it's a 47% decrease, which was a significant decrease in the active allergen after just 3 weeks of feeding. So 47%. So we're almost at 50%. But which is pretty big. What we did see is that in the study, 97% of cats did in fact show a reduction. So 97% showed a reduction. So that's good. And you could put forth that any reduction is a good reduction when it comes to that allergen load. When you take and you subset and cut out from that 97% on average, keeping in mind that some may be producing far more than others, a 47% reduction is, I think, quite significant and can potentially really help reduce the overall allergen load. But again, this is why, to me, it's important to say this is not meant to replace other allergen management strategies. It's meant to be another tool in the toolbox. So if you're vacuuming, you're washing, and you are now feeding this food, you're hopefully and ideally lowering that overall allergen burden in the allergen burden in the household, and that is really what we're after.
And there's a marvelous graph that shows threshold of allergies. So they kind of mount. I don't know if you can see on this camera, but they kind of build upon one another. And when you take something out that's significant, then you have a drop that usually places most people, maybe not everyone on the planet, but most people below that threshold, depending on what else they're allergic to, of course. So it's all to some extent individual, but that graph really does show, and I'm going to call you doctor because this question was written like a veterinarian had to ask that question. But it really does. That's why the graph you'd be impressed with, because it really does show that it drops then for the most part below that threshold. Here's a question, Dr. Venader, I don't know that you've ever received before. Is Purina Pro Plan Live Clear available in Sweden?
That is a great question, and I do not know the answer to that, but I would be happy to follow up with my colleagues. If someone wants to get in contact with me, certainly.
All right, next.
I'd love to. I don't know that answer. But I'd be happy to find out for you.
How about Lithuania? No, I'm just.
I'm taking a note.
They asked about Greece too, Dr.
Did they
Kurt,
really?
so,
Okay.
It looks like there's requests in Greece. I will say if it's not available and you need a courier, I would like to volunteer my services for you, for my people.
I may have to, I may have to just personally go deliver it, right?
You are that kind of guy. You are that kind of guy.
He is, and we've done lots of trips together, Dr. Venader, so that's one I need to go on. So
is it possible, just in the spirit of following up, if those folks can just write in to the folks right now on the line and provide email addresses and the country they'd like to know about, I will certainly follow up with my team.
Okay, one more question here, because we're running out of time, I can't get to all of them. If I feed a quarter dental care diet and 3/4 Purina Pro Plan Live Clear, is that okay? And similar questions like that, not necessarily a dental diet, but some other diet. And what is the magic formula, if indeed there is one?
It may depend on what else you're feeding in terms of caloric density, et cetera. But I would say I try to simplify it. If the majority of what you're feeding is Live Clear and you're getting that mouth action with that egg protein ingredient, throughout the day on that daily basis, you'd be fine with a quarter of that other diet that the person was asking the question about.
Okay, I have an email address for everyone. And so here's what'll happen. You can email meow@basepaws.com. Isn't that perfect? meow@basepaws.com. And then Basepaws will forward the email to Dr. Venader. Dr. Venader, we are literally out of time. I apologize for that because I know we could keep talking about this for quite a while. I will tell you, friends, and this is the honest to goodness truth. I went to a symposium where I learned this was true before, what, a year and a half ago, well before it all became public. And I said, and I still mean now, I've been doing what I do for 30 years almost. And this is the greatest advent for cats. It will save so many cats. Unfortunately for you, Dr. Venader, the product came out as the pandemic was starting. The timing wasn't great there. So getting the word out about this is incredibly important because we are talking about saving lives. We're also, as you talked about, we're talking about improving lives as well, improving the quality of life and the human-animal bond with cats, which is why working with HABRI, the Human Animal Bond Research Institute, was perfect. In addition to that, I know you also work with the Human Animal Bond Association, and you could find both of those organizations on, where else? Facebook. So Dr. Venader, as always, my pleasure. When I heard you were here, I said, I'll pay to introduce him. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Guys, thank you all. Back with another talk in just a little bit.